Have you ever sat down to do something important and suddenly felt the urge to do something else? You open your laptop, then you start cleaning your desk, you check a few messages, watch a quick video, scroll through your phone for just a minute, and somehow an hour disappears. Most people see moments like this and immediately think, I'm lazy. But what if that's not true? Because many people who call themselves lazy actually care deeply about their goals. They want to succeed. They want to make progress. They know exactly what they should be doing. Yet when the moment comes to begin, they hesitate. They procrastinate. They do almost anything except the thing that matters most. The strange part is that this often has very little to do with laziness. The real question isn't, am I lazy? The real question is, what am I avoiding? Because sometimes your brain isn't running away from the task itself. It's running away from the feelings attached to it. And until you understand that, you'll keep fighting the wrong enemy. What if procrastination isn't a character flaw, but a hidden survival mechanism? For most of your life, you've probably been told the same thing. If you're not getting things done, you must be lazy. Miss a deadline? Lazy. Keep putting something off? Lazy. Spend hours scrolling instead of working? Definitely lazy. But the more psychologists study human behavior, the more complicated the picture becomes. Because true laziness is actually much rarer than people think. A genuinely lazy person doesn't care about the outcome. They don't spend hours worrying about unfinished work. They don't feel guilty when they avoid responsibilities. And they certainly don't lie awake at night thinking about everything they should have done. Yet many people do exactly that. They care. They worry. They want to make progress. But somehow they still can't start. That's because what looks like laziness from the outside is often something very different on the inside. Imagine Daniel sitting at his desk. He has an important project due next week. He knows it matters. He knows delaying it will only create more stress. Yet instead of working, he spends the evening doing small, meaningless tasks. Not because he doesn't care, because avoiding the project feels easier than facing it. This is where many people get confused. They think procrastination is a motivation problem, but often it's an emotional problem. The task isn't what the brain is resisting, it's the discomfort connected to the task. And until you understand that difference, you'll keep calling yourself lazy when the real issue is something much deeper. To understand why procrastination happens, we need to understand something about the human brain. Your brain was not designed to make you productive. It was designed to keep you alive. For most of human history, survival was the priority. Avoid danger, conserve energy, stay with the group, live long enough to see tomorrow. The problem is that the modern world is very different from the world our ancestors lived in. Today, most of us aren't running from predators. We're facing deadlines, job interviews, presentations, difficult conversations, new opportunities. But here's what many people don't realize. Your brain often reacts to psychological threats the same way it reacts to physical threats. It doesn't like uncertainty. It doesn't like situations where the outcome is unknown. It doesn't like the possibility of failure. It doesn't like the possibility of being judged. And it especially doesn't like anything that might make you feel inadequate. Imagine Daniel is about to submit an important application. Part of him wants to do it, but another part starts asking questions. What if I get rejected? What if I'm not qualified enough? What if people realize I'm not as capable as they think? Suddenly, opening the application feels uncomfortable, and that discomfort becomes a signal. Not a signal that something is wrong, but a signal that something feels risky. The brain interprets that feeling as danger. So it begins searching for an escape route. Maybe that's checking social media. Maybe it's cleaning the kitchen. Maybe it's watching videos for an hour. The activity doesn't matter. What matters is that it helps the brain avoid discomfort. And the relief feels good, at least temporarily. That's why procrastination can feel strangely rewarding in the moment. You're not escaping the task. You're escaping the emotions attached to the task. The challenge is that the task never disappears. It simply waits, growing larger and more intimidating every day, which is exactly how the cycle begins. The most dangerous thing about procrastination isn't losing time. It's the cycle it creates. At first, the task doesn't seem that difficult. Maybe it's a report, an assignment, a business idea, a phone call you've been avoiding, something small, something manageable. But instead of doing it, you decide to wait until later. For a moment, that decision feels good. The discomfort disappears, the pressure fades, and your brain rewards you with a sense of relief. But then tomorrow arrives. The task is still there, only now it feels slightly bigger, slightly heavier, slightly more intimidating, so you avoid it again. A few days pass. Now you're not only dealing with the task itself, you're dealing with the guilt of avoiding it, the stress of unfinished work, the anxiety of knowing you're falling behind, and suddenly the task has become much larger than it originally was. Daniel experienced this constantly. The longer he delayed something, the harder it felt to begin. Not because the work had changed, because the emotions around it had grown. The project became associated with stress. Stress created avoidance. Avoidance created more stress, and the cycle repeated itself. This is the trap most people never notice. They think the task is becoming harder. In reality, they're accumulating emotional weight. Every day of avoidance adds another layer of pressure, another layer of self-doubt, another layer of fear. Eventually, opening a simple document can feel overwhelming. Not because the task is impossible, but because weeks of avoidance have transformed it into something much bigger inside your mind. And that's why procrastination becomes so difficult to break. The longer you wait, the more your brain believes there's something to be afraid of. Once people realize they're procrastinating, they usually start looking for advice. And that's where another problem begins. Because some of the most popular productivity advice sounds good, but doesn't address the real issue. The first is, just be more disciplined. At first, this advice seems reasonable, and sometimes it even works. For a day, maybe a week, you force yourself to push through the resistance. You rely on willpower. You tell yourself to stop making excuses. But eventually, the same struggle returns. Because discipline can help you act despite discomfort. It doesn't explain why the discomfort exists in the first place. If fear is driving the behavior, simply demanding more discipline is like treating the symptom while ignoring the cause. Then there's the motivation approach. Many people believe they're one inspiring video away from changing their lives. They watch something powerful, feel energized, promise themselves that tomorrow will be different, and for a few hours it feels true. But motivation is an emotion, and emotions come and go. The moment that emotional high disappears, the old habits return. That's why motivation often creates short bursts of action instead of lasting change. And then there's the perfectionist's favorite strategy: planning, researching, preparing, organizing, creating the perfect system, the perfect schedule, the perfect starting point. The problem is that planning can become another form of avoidance. It feels productive, but it keeps you safely away from actually doing the work. Many people spend more time preparing to start than they spend starting, because planning feels safer than action. Action creates uncertainty. Action creates the possibility of failure. And that's exactly what the brain has been trying to avoid all along. Which is why the solution isn't more pressure. It's understanding how to work with your brain instead of against it. So if discipline isn't the answer, what actually works? The first solution is surprisingly simple. Make the task smaller. Most people try to motivate themselves to finish an entire project, but that's not what the brain sees. The brain sees something large, something uncertain, something that requires effort, and immediately resistance appears. So instead of focusing on finishing the project, focus on starting it. Don't write the entire report. Open the document. Don't study for 3 hours. Read 1 page. Don't think about running 5 miles. Put on your shoes. The goal is to reduce resistance until taking the first step feels almost effortless. Because starting is often the hardest part. The second solution is learning to separate the task from the emotions attached to it. Ask yourself, what am I actually afraid of? Failure, rejection, looking foolish, not being good enough? Most of the time, the task itself isn't the problem. It's the emotional story surrounding it. Once you recognize that, the fear loses some of its power. And remember this, doing something badly is still better than never doing it at all. Because imperfect action creates progress. Avoidance creates nothing. The third solution is making procrastination less convenient. Right now, distractions are everywhere. Your phone, social media, open tabs, endless notifications, your brain will almost always choose the easiest available option. So change the environment, put your phone in another room, close unnecessary tabs, remove obvious distractions. When avoidance requires more effort than the task itself, your brain becomes far more likely to choose action. And finally, stop waiting to feel ready. This is one of the biggest traps of all. People assume motivation comes first, then action follows. But in reality, it's usually the opposite. Action creates momentum. Momentum creates confidence. Confidence creates motivation. Most people don't act because they feel ready. They feel ready because they act. And that single shift can change everything. Before we continue, I'm curious. Which of these strategies do you think would help you the most right now? Making the task smaller, removing distractions, or stopping the need to feel ready? Let us know in the comments. At this point, the most important thing to remember is this. You are probably not lazy. What you're experiencing is often something much more human. You're avoiding discomfort. You're avoiding uncertainty. You're avoiding emotions that your brain has learned to associate with danger. And strangely enough, your brain believes it's helping you. Every time it pushes you toward distractions, it's trying to protect you from stress. Every time it convinces you to wait until tomorrow, it's trying to avoid discomfort. The problem is that this protection comes at a cost, because the things that help us grow often involve discomfort. Learning something new, taking a risk, making mistakes, facing uncertainty, none of these things feel comfortable, but they are necessary. Once you understand what's really happening, something begins to change. You stop treating yourself like the enemy. You stop assuming there's something wrong with you. Instead of fighting your brain, you start working with it. You make tasks smaller. You reduce friction. You expect discomfort instead of fearing it. And little by little, the cycle begins to break. Because procrastination becomes much less powerful when you can see the mechanism behind it. And when you stop calling yourself lazy, you finally give yourself the chance to move forward. The next time you find yourself avoiding something important, pause for a moment. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" ask, "What am I afraid of feeling?" That single question can change everything. Because growth doesn't begin when fear disappears. It begins when you stop letting fear make your decisions. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need endless motivation. And you certainly don't need to become a different person. You just need to take one small step, then another, then another. Because every meaningful achievement starts the same way. Not with confidence, not with certainty, but with action. And once you understand that, the things that once felt impossible may finally start to feel within reach. So be patient with yourself. Your brain isn't broken, it's learning, and so are you.